The day began quietly, almost too quietly. Morning sunlight stretched across sleepy suburbs, busy city streets, and quiet farmlands. Children walked to school. Workers rushed to buses and trains. Farmers wiped sweat from their brows as they started another long day. It was just an ordinary morning on Earth, until the sky itself changed. At first, it looked like a strange storm. A ripple spread across the blue, bending light as if the heavens were a sheet of glass cracking under pressure. Then the ripple grew, opening wider, until the sky tore apart. Through the tear came shadows, massive shadows. Ships. Not human ships. Not like anything Earth had ever built. They were too big, too sharp, too alien. They moved as if gravity itself bent to their will. Some were shaped like blades, others like floating fortresses, bristling with weapons that glowed in eerie green. Their surfaces shimmered with dark energy, alive like scales of some giant predator. The people below froze. Traffic stopped. Farmers dropped their tools. Children stayed upward, mouths open, their teachers too stunned to speak. Phones came out instantly, recording, streaming. Within minutes, the world knew Earth was no longer alone. But this was no peaceful arrival. A voice filled the sky. It was not a sound carried by air, but something deeper, something that slipped into every mind at once. It was cold, metallic, and powerful. Humans, we are the Velari. We are your rulers now. Humanity will kneel, or humanity will burn. The voice echoed across the world. It reached every city, every town, every home. There was no place to hide from it. In Washington, London, Beijing, Moscow, leaders scrambled to respond. Calls were made. Emergency meetings began. But before any could act, another ripple tore open above the United Nations headquarters. From it descended a smaller ship, sleek and silver-black. A beam of light shot downward, striking the ground like lightning. And then, figures appeared. The Velari, tall, armored, their faces hidden behind smooth masks of polished obsidian. Their eyes glowed faintly with blue fire, unblinking. Every step they took vibrated the earth. Soldiers raised their weapons, but the aliens did not flinch. They carried staffs of energy, and with a flick, they melted tanks into glowing rivers of metal. Inside the UN chamber, world leaders tried to speak, tried to reason. One leader shouted about peace. Another demanded answers. Another begged for time. The Velari leader silenced them with a gesture. We have conquered 20 worlds. We have broken empires greater than yours. Do not speak. Do not beg. You have only two choices, kneel or be erased. Screens across the world broadcast the scene. Billions of humans watched as their strongest voices were cut off, their leaders silenced like children before a teacher. Panic spread. Cities shook as alien warships hovered above skyscrapers. Their shadows swallowed entire neighborhoods. Some fired warning blasts, turning oceans into boiling steam and craters into glass. The Velari expected the screams. They expected chaos, riots, collapse. That was what always happened. On every world they conquered, fear had been the first and final weapon. But on Earth, something strange happened. Yes, people panicked at first. Cars crashed. Shops closed. Families huddled together. But after those first moments of fear, silence. Not the silence of surrender, not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of waiting. Humans stood in the streets, staring upward, watching. Soldiers held their ground. Farmers stood with their tools like weapons. Mothers whispered to their children, not in despair, but in calm, steady voices. The fear was there, but it did not control them. The Velari noticed. Their leader tilted his head, studying the crowd of humans through his burning blue eyes. On other worlds, whole civilizations had fallen on their knees at this point, begging for mercy. Yet here, the humans stood tall, silent, unbroken. One of the alien generals whispered in their strange tongue, "Why do they not crumble? Why do they not weep?" The leader's reply was sharper, almost uncertain. They are hiding something. And indeed, beneath the stillness, something stirred in humanity. It was not seen in weapons or armies, but in the eyes of the people. A spark, small but dangerous. A spark the Velari had never seen before. The sky still burned with alien warships. The ground still shook under their threat. Humanity was still outmatched, still vulnerable. But even as the alien voice thundered across the world, demanding submission, billions of humans stayed silent. Not because they were broken, not because they were weak, because they were waiting for the right moment. The Velari, so sure of their power, felt the first hint of unease. Something about this species was wrong. Something about these humans did not match the patterns of the past. The aliens had conquered 20 worlds before. But this world, this humanity, there was something hidden here. Something the galaxy had never faced. And as the alien fleet darkened the skies, as the people of Earth stood in silence, the question spread like fire across every heart, every mind, every shadowed street. What hidden power are the humans holding back? The Velari did not wait long. For them, conquest was a routine, a pattern repeated across stars and centuries. They always began with fear. Fear was the blade that cut down resistance before it could grow. Fear was the poison that made even the strongest civilizations collapse without a fight. So, on Earth they began their test. The first city chosen was Paris. A Velari warship hovered above the Eiffel Tower, its black hull glowing with lines of molten blue energy. Thousands of people had gathered below, frozen in terror, staring up at the floating fortress. Then the voice came again, cold and sharp. Humans, watch and understand. A beam of energy lanced downward, striking the Seine. The river boiled instantly, sending up clouds of steam that rolled across the city. Bridges melted into twisted iron. Stone walls shattered like clay. The people screamed and ran. But the aliens watched closely, and what they saw disturbed them. The people fled, yes, but they did not scatter into chaos. Firemen rushed toward the devastation with hoses and gear, fighting smoke and flames. Police guided crowds to safety, shouting orders that were obeyed. Families held hands, refusing to separate. Strangers pulled each other from the rubble. Fear was there, but instead of shattering them, it pushed the humans together. The alien commander frowned. On other worlds, such displays of power had been enough. Cities had fallen into madness. Populations had begged for mercy. But hey, the humans resisted, not with weapons, but with unity. The second test came in Tokyo. A Velari ship sent patrols into the streets. Tall, armored figures stalked the city, their staffs glowing with energy. They smashed cars, ripped open buildings, and fired blasts into the air. Humans ran at first, but soon they regrouped. Police officers armed only with pistols formed barricades. Civilians threw bottles, stones, anything they could find. A bus driver used his own vehicle to block a street, protecting a crowd of children. The aliens laughed at the primitive defiance. But again, they noticed something. The humans did not turn against each other. They did not fight for scraps of safety. They fought side by side, as if bound by invisible threads. By the third test, the Velari were no longer mocking. In Cairo, a massive energy strike was launched directly into the desert. Sand fused into glass for miles, a glowing scar carved into the earth. The aliens expected despair, hopelessness. But as the dust settled, the people did something unexpected. They prayed, not in fear, but in defiance. Their voices rose together, strong and unbroken. Even as alien soldiers marched through the streets, the sound of human voices filled the air, voices that did not tremble. The Velari generals gathered on their flagship, reviewing the recordings. Holograms of human cities flickered before them, each showing the same pattern. Fear, yes, but also resistance. Panic, yes, but also courage. Why are they not breaking? One general demanded. His voice was harsh, laced with frustration. They should be on their knees by now. The leader, taller than the rest, stood silent for a long moment. His glowing eyes scanned the images of humans pulling each other from rubble, humans shouting at armored soldiers, humans refusing to kneel. Finally, he spoke. They are different. Fear feeds them. It makes them stronger. The words hung heavy in the chamber. For a race that ruled through terror, this was a dangerous truth. On the ground, humans began to notice something too. In New York, a firefighter named Daniel watched alien patrols stalk the streets. He saw how people reacted, not by giving up, but by standing firm. He spoke to his crew in the middle of the chaos, his voice calm but sharp. We fought fires that wanted to burn us alive. We faced storms that tore cities apart. These aliens, they're just another fire, and fire can be beaten. His words spread, first to his team, then to others, then through the city, across the ocean, in small towns and villages untouched by the first attacks. The same thought grew. We will not break. In bunkers and basements, in classrooms and kitchens, humanity began whispering the same quiet truth. The aliens had made a mistake. The Velari thought fear would make humans bow, but fear was making them rise. The alien fleet tightened its grip. More patrols, more threats, more destruction. Yet the more they pushed, the more resistance flared. And in the shadows, resistance groups began to form. Soldiers without orders, civilians without training, old veterans with nothing left to lose. They gathered weapons, maps, and courage. They watched the aliens carefully, learning, adapting. It was still small, still fragile. Against the Velari, humanity had no chance, yet. But the spark was there, and the Velari could feel it. For the first time in centuries, the conquerors felt something they had almost forgotten. Uncertainty. The world had changed. Alien warships still hung like black scars against the sky, their shadows stretching across oceans and mountains. Patrols of armored Velari stalked through cities, their glowing staffs humming with deadly energy. Fear had been unleashed, just as it had been on 20 conquered worlds before. But on Earth, fear did not crush. Fear sharpened. Fear united. Across the globe, people began to act. In New York, the firefighter Daniel and his crew had saved hundreds during the first attacks. Now, he found himself standing in an abandoned subway station. It was crowded with soldiers, police, doctors, and even criminals, anyone willing to fight. Old rifles, pistols, knives, even sharpened pipes were laid out on tables. The air buzzed with tension. A young soldier asked, "How can we fight them? Their weapons, their ships, we don't stand a chance." Daniel's reply was steady, his voice carrying through the room. "We don't fight them head-on. We fight them here." He tapped his chest. "We fight them in every street, every corner, every dark alley they think they own. We don't wait for orders. We become the resistance." The room erupted with nods and shouts of agreement. A new kind of army was forming, one without ranks, one without borders. And New York was not alone. In the mountains of Afghanistan, villagers hid travelers and soldiers, teaching them the paths through the rocks. In the jungles of South America, fighters painted their faces with mud and carried machetes, watching alien patrols from the trees. In Europe, resistance cells met in candlelit basements, writing plans on scraps of paper, whispering about targets. It was not one army, but thousands of small ones, each one growing, each one watching. The Velari mocked them at first. Patrols laughed as they crushed primitive weapons. Generals sneered when they saw humans planning in the date. On their flagship, alien officers boasted about how quickly the resistance would be erased. But then, something happened. A patrol disappeared in the streets of Chicago. Another vanished in the forests of Poland. A warship hovering over Rio de Janeiro suddenly exploded, its engines ripped apart from the inside. The Velari called it sabotage. They called it cowardice. But humans called it something else, victory. Small victories, but victories that mattered. For the first time, alien blood was spilled, and it spread through human hearts like wildfire. In Paris, survivors of the first attack scrawled words across the ruins of broken buildings. "We do not kneel." In Tokyo, school children sang the national anthem in defiance as patrols passed by. In Cairo, priests and imams stood side by side, leading crowds in chants of strength and unity. The resistance was no longer whispers. It was a roar. The Velari High Command gathered in their flagship, anger flickering in their glowing eyes. "They adapt too fast," one general hissed. "Each day, they learn. Each day, they grow. They should have broken by now," another snarled. "Their weapons are nothing. Their armies are scattered. Why do they keep fighting?" The leader was silent. He had seen it himself. Humans rushing into fire, pulling strangers from rubble, refusing to run even when hopeless. On other worlds, people had fought for survival. But these humans, they fought for something else. Something deeper. Finally, the leader said in a voice like thunder, "They fight for each other. That is their strength." The words unsettled the council. A species that drew power from unity was dangerous. Harder to break. Harder to rule. On Earth, the resistance only grew bolder. In the ruins of Los Angeles, a young hacker named Maria discovered how to intercept alien signals. Her team learned to jam communications, turning alien patrols blind. In Germany, engineers dismantled captured weapons, studying their power cells and finding ways to replicate the energy. In Africa, hunters who had tracked lions and elephants now stalked alien soldiers, using patience and cunning to bring them down. Everywhere, humans were learning, adapting, evolving. The Velari had wanted to test fear, but now, the test was turning against them. Daniel stood again in the underground station in New York, this time before a much larger crowd. Men and women from different nations, different languages, different walks of life, all gathered under flickering lights. He raised his voice. "They came here thinking we would bow. They thought fear would break us. But fear only woke us up. We are not fighting for one city or one country. We are fighting for all of us. For Earth." Cheers thundered through the tunnels. Weapons were raised high. For the first time since the invasion, the people believed they had a chance, not because they were stronger, but because they were together. Above the Earth, on the alien flagship, the leader watched through a massive viewport as resistance symbols began appearing on walls and rooftops across the planet. The humans were not breaking. They were rising. And for the first time, the Velari ruler felt something he had not known in centuries. Doubt. The Velari had ruled through fear for centuries. They had shattered empires, crushed armies, and silenced billions with a single command. No species had ever stood against them for long. But Earth was not following the pattern. The resistance was small, scattered, and poorly armed, but it was growing. And wise, it was learning. The Velari leader ordered a new plan. If force was not enough, then they would study this strange species. They would cut it open, layer by layer, until its secrets were exposed. So the captures began. Patrols swept through the streets at night, seizing humans and vanishing into the shadows of their warships. Soldiers, doctors, hackers, priests, anyone the aliens thought dangerous was taken. Families searched, but the missing never returned. Inside the cold laboratories of the flagship, the experiments started. Humans were measured, scanned, and tested under alien machines that hummed with energy. Blood samples were drawn. Neural patterns were mapped. The Velari wanted to know what made this species so hard to break. At first, they found nothing unusual. Humans were fragile, weak compared to other species. Their bones broke easily. Their flesh tore quickly. Their lifespans were short. But then something caught their attention. When a human was pushed to its limits, starved, injured, or frightened, the body did not simply collapse. It changed. Muscles rebuilt stronger. Reflexes sharpened. Brains adapted with frightening speed. One scientist spoke in disbelief. They learned faster under pressure. Stress makes them grow, not weaken. Another added, almost whispering, they evolve inside their own lifetime. The Council of Velari generals listened in silence. The revelation was dangerous. A species that adapted this quickly could outgrow its conquerors in mere years. And it was not just the body. It was the mind. A captured human soldier was placed inside a simulation designed to break his will. He was shown endless battles, each one worse than the last. But instead of giving up, he adjusted. He learned patterns, found weaknesses, and fought harder each time. At the end of the test, the soldier looked directly at his captors and said, "You can't win. Every time you push us, we get better." The words unsettled the aliens. On other worlds, prisoners begged for death. This one was smiling. The Velari leader stood before the High Council and spoke. "We thought fear was their weakness. But fear is their weapon. Pain makes them stronger. Loss makes them dangerous. This is why they do not kneel. The chamber was silent. Generals shifted uneasily. Some argued for total destruction, burn Earth to ash before humanity grew any further. Others warned that such a move would spread rebellion across the galaxy. Meanwhile, on Earth, the resistance was already proving the scientists right. Maria, the hacker in Los Angeles, had begun cracking alien codes. What once took her days now took hours. Each failure made her faster, sharper, more determined. Her team hijacked alien drones, turning them back on their masters. In the mountains of South America, hunters who had never seen advanced weapons before learned how to disable alien patrols using simple traps. Every failed attempt taught them new tricks, and soon patrols were too afraid to enter the jungle. In Africa, a group of engineers built weapons from scraps of alien metal. Their first prototypes exploded. Their second barely worked. But by the 10th, they had a functional energy rifle. Each mistake was a lesson. Each lesson made them deadlier. Everywhere the aliens looked, humans were adapting. Daniel, the firefighter turned resistance leader in New York, saw it firsthand. His group had begun capturing alien technology. At first, they could not even power it. But within weeks, mechanics and scientists had figured out how to use the energy cores. Soon, resistance fighters carried weapons that could melt steel. One night, Daniel stood on a rooftop, staring at the massive Velari warship above the city. He clenched his fist and whispered to himself, "You came here thinking we would break, but you're teaching us how to beat you." On the flagship, the Velari scientists grew restless. One report described humans as a species of survivors, shaped by endless conflict with themselves, now turning that same resilience outward. Another concluded with a chilling warning. If they are not stopped now, they will rise beyond control. Humanity will not be conquered. Humanity will conquer. The Velari leader read the reports in silence. His glowing eyes narrowed. For the first time in centuries, he felt something he had never expected to feel toward a primitive world. Fear. The resistance had started with whispers in the dark, with stolen weapons and desperate courage. But now it was ready for something greater. For weeks, resistance groups around the world had worked in secret. Hackers cracked alien codes. Engineers rebuilt captured rifles. Guerrilla fighters studied patrol routes. Farmers and mechanics turned workshops into hidden factories, producing armor from scrap metal and explosives from fuel tanks. Humanity was preparing for its first open battle. The target was New York. The Velari flagship hung above the city like a storm cloud, its shadow swallowing skyscrapers. Patrols roamed the streets, armored and confident. For the aliens, New York was a symbol, a reminder that Earth was already theirs. For the resistance, it was the perfect place to send a message. We are not broken. Daniel, the firefighter turned leader, stood before a map drawn on the wall of a subway tunnel. Around him were fighters of every kind, soldiers without orders, engineers, hackers, doctors, and even teenagers carrying weapons too big for their hands. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned. They think this city is theirs. Tonight, we show them it belongs to us. The plan was risky. Resistance fighters would launch simultaneous strikes, hacking the flagship systems, sabotaging its engines, and ambushing patrols on the ground. It was madness, humans against gods, but madness was their only chance. Night fell. The first move came from Maria, the hacker. Hidden in a crumbling skyscraper, her fingers flew across a jury-rigged console connected to stolen alien tech. Lines of alien code scrolled across her screen, faster and faster. Sweat dripped down her face as alarms blared inside the Velari ship. Almost there, almost. Got it. Suddenly, the massive ship's shields flickered, then dropped for the first time since the invasion began. The city gasped as its dark surface became vulnerable. On the ground, Daniel's fighters struck. Explosions lit the night as humans swarmed patrols, armed with stolen staffs and homemade bombs. The streets filled with smoke and fire. For the first time, alien soldiers fell in large numbers. Their bodies, once thought invincible, now lay broken on cracked pavement. The Velari roared in fury. Warships fired down beams of energy, reducing blocks to rubble. But every blast only made the humans fight harder. Firefighters pulled civilians from burning buildings. Medics set up makeshift hospitals in underground tunnels. Fighters slipped through the chaos, striking from alleys and rooftops. The turning point came when a stolen alien rifle, rebuilt by human engineers, was fired at the flagship's engines. The beam of blue energy tore through its black hull, sending flames across its surface. The warship trembled. Its shadow wavered. For the first time since its arrival, the mighty Valari ship was hurt. Cheers erupted across the city. Resistance fighters shouted, civilians cried out, and even those trapped in the rubble raised their fists. Humanity had struck back, and it had worked. On the flagship's command deck, the Valari leader's eyes blazed with fury. "Impossible," a general muttered. "No primitive world has ever." "Silence," the leader snapped. His voice was tight, heavy. He had seen the impossible with his own eyes. The humans were not breaking. They were winning. The battle raged for hours. Streets ran with fire. Towers collapsed. Alien ships screamed through the sky. But through it all, the humans did not fall. Daniel led from the front, dragging wounded fighters to safety, firing stolen weapons, shouting orders through the smoke. At his side, Maria kept the flagship's systems disrupted, her hands moving even as bombs shook the building around her. By dawn, the city was scarred and broken. Buildings lay in ruins, streets cracked, smoke curling into the morning sky. But the flagship was gone. Its engines, crippled by human fire, had forced it to retreat into orbit. The Valari had never retreated before. Not once. Word spread faster than fire. Across the globe, radios crackled with the news. New York held. The flagship fled. In villages, cities, and hidden bunkers, people wept, cheered, and prayed. For the first time since the invasion began, hope burned brighter than fear. The Valari High Council gathered in silence. Generals who once boasted of easy conquest now spoke with unease. "This world is different," one muttered. "They are too dangerous," another hissed. "If they can strike down a flagship, what will they do next?" The leader stood motionless, staring out the viewport at the blue planet. His glowing eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something far rarer for his kind. Uncertainty. Below, on the battered streets of New York, Daniel stood with his fighters. The city was broken, but alive. People emerged from shelters, not in despair, but in triumph. He looked at the rising sun and whispered, almost to himself, "This is just the beginning." And he was right, because that night was not only the first victory, it was the turning point. The day the galaxy learned that humanity was not prey, but predators. The Valari flagship drifted in silence above Earth, scarred from battle. Its once flawless armor was blackened with burns, its engines weakened by human fire. The corridors echoed not with victory chants, but with whispers of doubt. For the first time in generations, the conquerors were shaken. Inside the council chamber, the high generals gathered around a glowing display of Earth. Their faces, cold, proud, and unyielding, were now lined with something unthinkable. "Unease," one general hissed. "This species is different. They fight harder the more they lose." Another slammed a clawed hand on the table. "No, it is numbers. They breed too quickly. We must exterminate them at once, before they adapt further." But the Supreme Commander did not answer. His eyes were fixed on the blue planet below, as though it hid a secret too dangerous to ignore. "Bring me one of them," he ordered at last. Alive. The chosen prisoner was Daniel. Captured during a skirmish outside the ruins of New York, he was dragged in chains before the alien council. His body bore wounds, his face dirted by ash and blood. Yet his eyes were steady, burning with the same quiet fire that had carried him through every battle. The Supreme Commander leaned forward. "You are broken flesh. Your cities burn. Your kind dies by the millions. And yet, you fight. Why?" Daniel said nothing at first. He let the silence stretch, the weight of his calm unnerving the council. Then, with a voice hoarse but unshaken, he answered, "Because we are human." The aliens sneered. "Empty words. What power lies in that? You are fragile. You are weak. Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile. Weak. You don't understand. Every time you strike us, we rise stronger. Every time you kill one of us, 10 more stand up. You thought fear would break us, but fear is our fuel. You thought loss would destroy us, but loss gives us reason. You cannot win, because you do not understand what it means to fight for something greater than yourself. The chamber grew tense. The council shifted uncomfortably. His words carried a weight they could not dismiss. The Supreme Commander studied him. And what is that greater thing you fight for? Daniel's gaze did not waver. We fight because we love. For our children. For each other. For a future you cannot take from us. The words struck like blades. For the Velari, love was weakness. Bonds were chains that made a warrior hesitate. They conquered through fear and domination. The idea that unity, compassion, and loyalty could be strength was alien to them, terrifying, even. One general snarled. Lies. Tricks. Emotions do not win wars. But the Supreme Commander raised a hand, silencing him. Deep inside, he felt something his species had not known for centuries. A chill. Could it be true? That the human strength was not their weapons, not their numbers, but the invisible thread that bound them together? Meanwhile, across Earth, the truth revealed itself again and again. In the ruins of London, neighbors dug through rubble side by side, pulling survivors from beneath fallen stone. In the deserts of Africa, tribes united, sharing food and weapons with strangers. In the mountains of Asia, villages sheltered fighters, hiding them from alien patrols at great personal risk. Everywhere, the same pattern repeated. When the Velari struck, humans did not scatter, they came closer. It was a kind of power the galaxy had never seen. Back aboard the flagship, the interrogation ended. Daniel was dragged away, but his words lingered in the chamber like fire. The generals argued fiercely. They are dangerous, one shouted. We must unleash the full fleet. Burn their oceans, crack their mountains, salt their soil until nothing lives. No, another countered, fear heavy in his voice. If we destroy them completely, the galaxy will whisper of our fate. Already other worlds are watching. If humans can wound us, others may rise as well. The Supreme Commander remained silent, his mind caught between pride and dread. He had crushed empires, enslaved worlds, extinguished entire species. But never before had he faced enemies who grew stronger with every wound. He remembered Daniel's words, "We fight because we love." The thought unsettled him more than any weapon, because deep down, he understood a truth he could never admit. The humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting because they could not stop. On Earth, Daniel was rescued in a daring raid. Maria and her team stormed the alien facility, hacking its defenses and dragging him out before the Velari could retaliate. As they fled through burning ruins, Daniel whispered the truth he had told the enemy. They don't understand us. That's why we'll win. Maria glanced at him, her eyes shining in the firelight. Then let's make sure the galaxy learns what it means to be human. Far above, the Velari Council finally admitted what none dared speak aloud. Humans were not prey. They were something new, something dangerous, and perhaps something destined to change the balance of the galaxy forever. This was the revelation. That day, the Velari discovered the power that no weapon could match. The power of humanity itself. The sky above Earth was no longer quiet. Alien warships blotted out the stars, their black holes like jagged scars across the heavens. Engines glowed, weapons armed, shadows cast over oceans and continents. The Velari had returned in full strength. This was no patrol, no intimidation. This was annihilation. The Supreme Commander's voice echoed across Earth through captured satellites. Humanity, you have resisted long enough. Tonight, your world ends. But below, the people did not bow. In bunkers, in forests, in ruined cities, humanity prepared. Resistance fighters checked weapons, pilots strapped into stolen alien craft, engineers guided civilians into shelters. From soldier to farmer, from hacker to child, they all knew the truth. This battle would decide everything. Daniel stood at the head of the resistance command, his arm bandaged, his face tired but unbroken. Around him were men and women who had lost everything, yet still stood. "They think they're ending us," he said, voice low but steady. "But tonight, we end their fear of us. Tonight, the galaxy learns who we are." The first strike came as the Velari unleashed a barrage of plasma fire. Cities shook, mountains split, oceans boiled. But before the flames could consume Earth, something unexpected lit the sky. A fleet of human ships, crude and scarred, but alive. Each vessel was built from wreckage, scrap, and stolen alien tech. Engines roared with mismatched power, hulls patched with steel and hope. They were not elegant. They were not advanced. But they were human. Maria's voice crackled through the comms. "Shields are up. Weapons hot. Time to show them what Earth can do." The human fleet rose to meet the invaders. The battle that followed was chaos and fire. Alien ships moved in perfect formation, sleek and disciplined. Human ships darted like wolves, reckless and unpredictable. The sky turned into a storm of energy beams, missiles, and fire. Explosions painted the darkness with light. Daniel piloted one of the captured alien fighters, leading a squadron of resistance pilots. His craft shook as blasts tore past him, but he gritted his teeth and pressed on. "Hit their engines," he shouted. "Don't fight their strength. Break their balance." And they did. One by one, human fighters slipped through alien formations, striking where no strategy book predicted. They moved not with programmed obedience, but with instinct, improvisation, and raw will. The Velari, trained to fight predictable enemies, began to falter. For the first time, the galaxy's greatest conquerors tasted confusion. On the flagship, the Supreme Commander's calm cracked. "They should be scattered," he roared. "How do they fight like this?" An aide whispered, trembling. "They do not fight like soldiers, they fight like survivors." The commander's eyes narrowed. Fear, cold and unfamiliar, crept into his chest. In orbit, Maria's team hacked into the flagship systems once more. Sparks flew as consoles overloaded. Her voice was fierce, steady. "Daniel, we've got their shields down. You've got one chance." Daniel's fighter dove through a rain of fire, engines screaming. Alien beams ripped past him, scorching the hull, but he did not slow. His eyes locked on the flagship's glowing core. "This is for everyone," he whispered. He fired. The stolen alien weapon roared, blue light carving through the flagship's heart. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the sky split open as the mighty vessel erupted in a storm of fire and light. The explosion lit Earth's surface brighter than the sun. Shockwaves tore through orbit, scattering alien ships in chaos. Human fighters roared in triumph. The unthinkable had happened. The invincible flagship was gone. Across the Velari fleet, silence reigned. Commanders froze, soldiers trembled. For centuries, they had conquered without fear. But now, in the ashes of their strongest ship, they felt something they had never known. "Terror! Retreat!" barked a general. "Fall back! Now!" And just like that, the mighty fleet broke apart, fleeing into the darkness of space. On Earth, cheers erupted. People poured from shelters, embracing, weeping, shouting to the heavens. Children danced in the rubble. Fighters raised weapons in victory. The world was scarred, but it was free. Daniel landed his battered fighter on the cracked remains of an airfield. Maria rushed to him, her face streaked with smoke and tears. "You did it," she whispered. He shook his head. "We did it. All of us." Around them, resistance fighters gathered, exhausted but alive. They had lost much, but they had gained something greater. Hope. Far away, in the silent reaches of space, the Velari Council trembled. Never before had they fled a battlefield. Never before had they feared a world. But tonight, fear consumed them. And the name of that fear was humanity. The narrator's voice closed the tale. That was the day the galaxy learned humanity's true power. Not their weapons, not their technology, but their unbreakable spirit, their love for one another, and their refusal to kneel. That was the day the Velari discovered fear. And it was only the beginning.